Good day, fellow champions of inclusion. I am AA Ron, and this is the Inclusive Dad Podcast, where we explore inclusion and make it practical. Before we dive in, don't forget to subscribe, rate, or review the show on your favorite platform. We truly appreciate your feedback and would be honored if you shared the podcast with friends and family who might benefit. If you want to support us in our mission, please click on the link in the show description. Today, my guest is Katey Fortun. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. So first, just tell me a little bit about yourself.
Well, thanks again for having me. I'm so excited to be on your podcast today, and congrats on the podcast. It's so awesome. I am Katey Fortun from a very small town in the Midwest, Wisconsin. So we're neighbors essentially. And I grew up in a small town, struggled as a kid, I have a learning disability. Thank goodness I got diagnosed and went to college. I'm doing like a super high level of my life. Went
Yeah.
to college, graduated as an interior designer. And that was a big positive for me, like to be able to get through college, do a great job, advocate for myself, and then was an interior designer for many years. Got into outside sales. And within all of that time after college, I started speaking and doing a lot of motivational speaking for kids with disabilities and that whole community, our community. And now I'm doing a lot of other things I'm sure we'll talk about in the podcast today. So, yeah, that's a little
That's
bit about
awesome.
me.
There you go. Thanks for being on. And I was on your podcast. A couple of months ago, I think maybe something like
Yeah.
that.
Yep.
This year's going by quickly, like they all do, I guess. But
Yeah, it's crazy. Well, and the hard part is like we recorded it and then
yeah,
I batch all of this, so I have so many booked up that like it
yeah,
goes out a couple months later. So like honestly, we probably talked many months ago
yeah,
and it got to go out there, but it was awesome having you on as
yeah.
my guest.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So first question today is, what is your definition of inclusion?
Oh, I love that question. It is ever changing for me because the world is ever changing, but to the core of it, and this kind of goes back to what I am passionate about, is number one, my biggest thing for people is to learn to advocate for yourself and have build up that self-confidence and all of that stuff. Because when you're doing that for yourself and you know who you are and how you learn or how you do things differently or and what makes you the best you, it is so much easier and more natural to include others because you have that empathy and you understand. I was just having a talk with my nephew the other night and I just said, I go, hey, your Aunt Kate's writing a book, and did you know that I'm dyslexic? And I was just kind of like chatting with him. He's 11, and he goes, yeah, you talk about it all the time. Like he was just like yeah, you do. And then I'm like, yeah, do you have anyone in school that you ever see that? He goes, no, not at our age. We don't really notice like that, whatever. But I go, but if you did, he goes, well, they're just cool kids like me. Like that's
Right.
cool, like so like just teaching ourselves to know about ourselves. So we're like, I feel like when people, not always, but when people aren't including and are nasty to people, it's because they are having problems themselves. They're
Right.
hurting and there's
Yep.
things that they need to work on. And so I'm like, oh, advocate, learn about yourself, learn how you do things the best that you can do them. And that opens the door to include others. But I am so for inclusion. I hope that's a good answer or I
That's a
answered
great
your
answer.
questions, but I was like,
Yeah.
oof, no one gets left out over here. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
That's great. You brought up a lot of stuff there, but one of the things is, do you? Sometimes I feel like kids get inclusion, like they don't see different, races, different abilities as much as like adults. Do you think kids do a way better job at just naturally including, and then at some point, as we get older, like we make it harder than it needs to be?
Yes. I love kids. Like kids are the best because number one, I what I love the most about kids, and I've talked to a lot of people on my podcast about it, especially with physical disabilities, right? Ones you can see.
Right.
I love when kids ask questions,
Yeah.
and like, "Oh, why are you in a wheelchair?" I will never forget. This is actually a really funny story. Um, when my nephew, the same nephew, was really little, I went over to I call her my adopted grandma, and I just love I love her. And her husband
Yeah.
at the time, um, he was alive still, and we went over to their house, and her husband had just had to get his leg amputated. They're a lot older than us and everything,
Yeah.
and my nephew was so little, and he sits down on the floor, and he's watching some, uh, it was like a Western movie or something with his name was Tom, and he looked up, and he's sitting down next to his wheelchair. He looks up at Tom and goes, "Hey, Tom, where'd your leg go?" Like, just, like, so and I'm like, like,
Yeah. Right.
I was
Yeah.
like and Carol, my adopted grandmother, I call her, she just busted out laughing, and Tom goes, "Oh, shoot, where'd it go?" Like, he just,
That's
like,
awesome.
so,
Yeah.
like, fun and, like but they were so little and I just love that they ask because it's the
Yeah.
I've had people on my podcast say like, "Hey, I'm in a wheelchair," and the parent will pull them away, and
Right.
I'm like, "Whoa, whoa, whoa," and she's like, "I don't want them to. I'd rather them ask and we can talk
Yeah.
about it." And same with invisible disabilities like me. Why Katie, why do you leave the classroom to go to another class? I would rather you ask me that question to when I need to go and get help or something than you talk behind my back. So,
Absolutely.
I love that kids do that. It's heartbreaking to me that it gets pulled out of them a little bit as they grow, but
Right.
hopefully we and you, like you're doing in your community, can keep building that up and being like, "Hey, keep asking, keep
Yeah.
having conversations because we can all keep learning."
Absolutely. Well, that is very true because my daughter Cece uses a wheelchair. So, I mean, little kids, I mean, like real little kids, they'll just walk up and like touch it, look at it, like climb up on it and stuff. And parents are like, "Oh, don't do that." And it's like, it's cool. I mean, they're coming over to her and talking to her, so that's the first thing. I mean, I just want people to be feel like they can come over and talk to her for sure. So yeah, it is interesting how the parents are like, "Don't do that," or "Don't ask that," or "Yeah, why are you in there?" No, don't
Yeah.
say that. It's like, no, it's okay. You need to ask questions. It's better to ask questions than not, and then not know what's going on and make assumptions. So it's very true.
Yeah, I love that. I love that when kids can go up, and then it also makes whether it's a kid or an adult in that said wheelchair, it makes them more comfortable talking about
Yeah,
themselves and
for
their
sure.
different abilities, and I think that's so
Absolutely.
awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love it.
I think one of the things you talked about is, I mean, just knowing yourself and then, advocating, being able to advocate for yourself. I mean, for me growing up, I came from a household where we didn't talk about anything. Like we didn't really talk about our feelings. So I didn't really learn to, if something was going on, be able to share that in like in a healthy way, which obviously isn't good for anybody. So, I mean, do you have any suggestions or how can people like learn more about themselves, who they are, how to express their feelings? Any tips on that?
Oh my gosh, well, I'll have a whole book of it soon. But yes, I love that. I was very fortunate, and I'm very fortunate that I did grow up in a home that whether they liked it or not, we talked about our feelings. Like,
Right. Okay.
you know,
Yeah.
my it was just me and my sister. So I don't know if it probably isn't, but if it was a girl thing and we just emotionally we're just like, we're gonna talk about this. But
Yeah.
my mom and dad did a really nice job at always saying, like, say what you want to say. And,
Right.
we'll still love you. Like, there's times that I was like, I don't like you, like, and
Yeah.
even now I'll be like, we're not doing this. Like, at 35, I still stand up to my parents and say, no, 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 like, we're not doing this today,
Right.
or whatever. And it did start. So I will say before I was diagnosed, so I was diagnosed at 10 between fourth and fifth grade.
Okay.
And in the Midwest, for anyone that doesn't live here, at least in my small town, 4th grade was elementary school, 5th and up was middle school. And
Sure.
so like that we were in different it was a tiny town, but we still went to different like physical buildings and then went to a new building. So it was kind of a scary time for me. But before I was diagnosed, I was shy, didn't talk to anyone, was almost even scared of my uncles, like just kept quiet and wanted to be not seen. And it was I now being older and learning more about myself and looking back and honestly writing this book has been wow. Diving into my past is I didn't realize I was struggling so much in school. I felt dumb, stupid, and alone. And I hate those words, but that's how I felt. And
Hmm.
I didn't I didn't wanna be seen because I didn't know what was, quote, "wrong with me." Okay, and
Right.
nothing's wrong with anyone, by the way. But, like, I hated that, and the day I was diagnosed was the best day of my life because I knew I just learn differently. At that
Right.
time, finally, it wasn't like Katey's just dumb. No, her brain actually works differently,
Yeah.
and that's okay. And I think starting at that point was a big part for me. But honestly, watching my mom advocate for me and fight for me, and even before I was diagnosed, I saw it. And that was my first time learning. And thankfully, it was from my mom. And thankfully, after I was diagnosed, my teachers, like, they were really great. I was very fortunate and lucky. But honestly, it came from, thankfully, my parents were a
Yeah.
huge part of that for me. My dad always taught me, like, he used to teach me how to shake hands. It's a weird thing to think about, but he's like,
Mhm.
"No, you shake someone's hand like they know you're there. We don't need any of this wimpy hand stuff. You make sure." It's like the
Yeah.
Midwestern thing, like, I know
Yeah.
you're like, "Okay, I got you." But I did he's like, "You're gonna know if you shake like a man's hand, they better know you're there, Katey." And I'm like, "Okay, Chris." Like, and so, like, I practiced and just I honestly just kept learning about myself, and a lot of it was through school and through some really amazing teachers. Um, and then slowly but surely, I kept building that up in my confidence. And um, one of my teachers that made one of the biggest impacts for me was a high school special education teacher, and she made us all, it sounds kind of mean, but we all in her class that needed extra help and had learning disabilities had to take a class. And she created it and went off some books that she learned in her career. And we, each of us, learned specifically about our own disability and through that
Mhm.
whole semester. And it was really, really helpful. And so I give her a lot of credit and my parents, but also just learning to, like, it's so hard to do. So if anyone's listening to this, it is so hard to be confident and bold and everything like that and ask questions. But I like to tell kids and teens and anyone is, if you don't ask the question, the answer is already no. So for
Right.
example, if you said to me, "Katey, I want you on my podcast." But if you didn't ask that question, I wouldn't have already been on your podcast, right? And
Yep.
vice versa. But if you ask, you have a 50-50 shot of getting a yes. If you don't ask, it's already a no. So what do you have to lose? So just
Yeah.
ask and just go out there. And I kind of feel that way about a lot of things. Have I gotten myself into some, not real trouble, but like feisty trouble? Yeah, because I'll just be like, "Why?" If someone says something, I'm kind of bold about that, but that has been years of me building that up, and it doesn't mean I still don't get nervous, and it isn't, I still do. Um, but the biggest one is to truly learn about myself, and uh, that was a big one with teachers and my parents that have helped me. And now I'm just curious about everything. So weirdly, TikTok, Instagram Reels, all of those things, I have learned a lot about myself by watching other creators talk about disabilities and different things. And it is really inspiring and empowering for people. So I guess real quick to wrap that up, because that was not quick, was I'm terrible. I talk a lot. Um to wrap that up is I just lost it. Oh man. I I want people to know, like, to keep learning and growing about you, and
Yes.
you will be able to help others through that as well. Um, I think that is the best thing, and it doesn't hurt to just keep learning every single day about yourself. So,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah. So for me, this year has been, I've learned a lot about myself this year. I One of the reasons I'm at the point I am with starting the podcast is I think I well, based on some of your posts that I see, you've heard about human design. I think.
Yes.
Yes. So I heard about human design in March this year. So I'm a projector, and just reading through some of the human design stuff, just like, wow, that's like exactly like me. And I mean, it's not the same as like dyslexia or that kind of stuff, but just like reading the human design stuff, and this is who I am, and I'm like, wow, that's actually how I function, and there's not something wrong with me. That's just how I am wired. So this is how I react to things has been such a game changer for me. Going from you see all the content about you have to do stuff like bang, bang, bang. I have to put out 30 pieces of content, whatever, whatever. And I'm like, that's just not who I am. That's not how I function. That's not how I work. So finding it out first of all, then accepting like I'm not going to be that person. I need to do stuff differently. I don't have the energy within me to do it that way. So just that has been like a huge game changer for me. So I agree with you 100%. Like we need to put in the work to learn about ourselves, who we are, because that's that's what's the most important. So that's just a
Oh
little
my
bit. But yeah, it's been crazy for me this year.
Human design legitimately changed my life recently too. I'm not kidding you. Like,
Yeah.
a big one for me on that one is I'm a manifester, so
Yep.
it's clear. Like, when I read it, I was like, "Okay, that makes sense." Like, I had
Right.
friends that just called me out on it before I even knew what it was. They're like, "You're for sure a manifester." But a
Yeah.
big one for manifestors, and I would beat myself up about this, is that we get huge bursts of energy and
Yep.
we like to get a lot done, but then because we use so much energy in that, and they can be small bursts, big burst, whatever,
Yeah.
but I need time to rest, and I
Yep.
was never doing that at all. So, like, I would burn out. Like, years ago, my husband would be like, look at his fake watch and be like, "Oh, yeah, it's about that time. You're gonna burn out this weekend. I need you to sleep all weekend." Like, in the most kind way. Like, he's like, "You've been running,
Right.
like, with fire on both ends and,
Yeah.
like, not stopping." He's like, "It's about time. If you do not rest, you will get sick."
Yeah.
And it was like clockwork. And
Yeah.
realizing that, and honestly writing this book, I was kind of hard on myself about it because I'm like, why am I not done? Get it done. Like, you have a deadline.
Yeah.
I'm terrible with deadlines too. But I'm like really hard on myself. And then I sat down and I said, you know what? Hold the phone, Katey. This
Yeah.
is really emotional what I'm writing. And it's
Right.
like I told actually my old special education teacher the other day, because I met with her because I'm writing about her in the book. I'm like, it literally is like someone, like, I'm unzipping, my body, and then I'm opening up all of my
Right.
parts so everyone can say, like, "Hey, look at all my feelings." Like, in everything, it's very
Yeah.
emotional. So, like, it takes a lot of energy to even write a single chapter that I had to, like, when I realized the human design thing and I've been learning more about it, I was like, "Oh my gosh, give
Yeah.
myself some grace." And
Yeah.
that is, I'm so glad you learned that too. That's so cool. It probably was around the same time that I kind of started clicking on,
It was
um
like early March for me was when I first heard about it, and then it's kind of
oh,
gone down the rabbit hole. But for me as a projector, like um, we don't create our own energy. I think is so we draw from others. So 2 to 3 hours a
mhm,
day of work is what they kind of say. And I mean, but I'm used to like I can go pretty hard for a while, and then it's the same thing though. Like I'm for a day or two, I'm like just sleeping or just
done.
so.
Mhm.
But it's yeah, no, it's very interesting. And my word of the year, I'd never done that before, was self compassion. What I picked for the
Oh,
year, so I did that, and then this happened, so it's kind of led to this part. So yeah, it is. I mean, just knowing these things, like just realizing that's how I'm, like I said, how I'm wired. I'm not weird, different. That's just who I am, and I accepting it and realizing, like I told you, I've already been fishing today. So for me, a big thing is just when I'm getting worn out, like if I'm out of it, kind of, I just go out in nature, go out fish, go
yeah.
for a walk, just do that to recharge. So just taking those times during the day to have a little bit of a rest because I need it. I mean, but I can go for a day or two pretty hard, but then the next day is like I just done. I'm like, "Okay, Aaron, you shouldn't do that."
Well, and
But
in general though, like, it's funny to think about, and I know maybe it's a society thing from, like, way back in the day, I have no idea, but, like,
yeah,
no human being should be running, like, you're not giving
yeah,
100% every day. You can't.
right,
Like, it's
yeah,
actually not healthy. So,
right,
like, the whole, like,
for sure,
8 hours a day and go, 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 you have to give all your what? No.
right,
Like, what do you mean? That's not even true. Like, so
yeah,
I've learned that too. I think that's really awesome, and no, it is true because everyone listening, we're recording this at like 9 in the morning, and you said to me before we started recording, "Yeah, I've been fishing." I go, "You've been fishing already?" Like, I
yeah,
was like, "Oh my gosh, that's awesome." So,
yeah,
like, that's amazing, and being able to, like, do that and know who you are and how you
yeah,
work, but also it for me, it helps me learn about other people too. So that's
for
with the
sure,
Enneagram too. I love the Enneagram,
yep,
but the human design thing, I'm like, "Oh my gosh, my husband is a
yeah,
generator. He's a
right,
doer." So, like, I am the ideas person. He
yep,
is the doer. One of my best friends is a generator. She's a doer. And I'm like, "Oh, I need these people in my life." Like, I
yeah,
these are the people I need to surround myself with. all sorts of different people, but, like, I'm like, "These are the people that'll help me get it done," you know? And so learning about them and how they work too
Yep,
helps me be a better
for
human
sure.
for
Yeah.
them. I think that's cool.
So yeah,
So
me and my my partner, I introduced or brought it up. Now she's figuring her stuff out, and I should know what she is. I think she's a manifesting generator. She's probably gonna be mad that
oh,
I
those
didn't
are
get it
good
right.
ones too.
Yeah, so just
That's
like
okay.
yeah, the relationship dynamics that come between them are like yeah, how I'm wired versus how she's wired. So you don't, just knowing all that stuff definitely helps. So yeah, but
Oh my
my
gosh.
thing is I have in my chart is like I'm always in the now, which I've never been able to like set goals. Like if I come up with a goal, first of all, it like I just don't. It's not doesn't motivate me. So going through this, finding out that I'm a splenic projector, so that means like I just get hits of stuff like, and I need to follow it. So I'm always in the now, always like in survival like mode, like fight or flight. So it's just, and I can function, situations where it's, I mean, pretty crazy for most people, but I'm completely calm, and that's just who I am. But it's just
Mhm.
would be mad at myself for not setting a goal first of all, and then if I did, just not even caring or checking in on it. So just like stuff like that where it's just this is just who I am. I don't need to not beat myself up. So yeah, it's
I
pretty
think
fun.
that's so interesting about you because it makes sense. I mean, I don't know you like, I
Yeah.
know you from my podcast and now,
Yep.
right? And following each other on Instagram, Facebook, all the things. But you are one of the calmest people, like, your demeanor and how you talk, and that is so interesting you say the now, and my husband's not a projector, but I should ask him about his stuff because I'll be like, "What's your goals for life?" He's like, "Ew." Like, he's like
Yeah.
and I'm like, "Oh, I have goals for the rest of my life." And he's like,
Yeah.
"What?" Like, he's just
Yeah.
and he's gotten like, he brings me back down to earth a
Yeah.
little bit because 'cause I'm in the clouds, and then
Yeah.
I bring him up in the clouds a little bit sometimes, but he'll be that I've never today, it literally clicked when you just said that. He very much lives in the now as well,
Right.
and and now it clicked with me when you just said that because I'm like, "Wow, I'm a lot for him." I guess I'm thinking because 'cause I'm always like,
Yeah.
"Here's my list of goals and dreams. This is
Right.
how I'm gonna do them, and I'm gonna hire people to help me." And he's like, um, I'm just really happy I, got my job
Yeah.
done today, and, like, got
Yeah.
this done today or whatever." So that is awesome to know that, and again, that
And,
just goes back to what you said before and what I said before
right.
is learning about yourself
Right.
and having it opens up more compassion for you to be
For sure.
compassionate about others. Same with
Absolutely.
me. I think that's awesome.
I feel like we could talk like 6 hours on human design, so I probably should focus here.
Literally, I know. You should have someone on
um.
human design. we should find someone
Oh,
for
we
you to
should.
interview for
Yeah,
human design
that'd
on
be
your
fun.
podcast.
Well, actually, okay, yeah, I should do that. You talked a little bit about it, but how can we use empathy to be more inclusive?
Well, again, it's the more like we just said it, like, the more you learn about yourself and the more
Yep.
I think the most empathetic people I've ever met are people that have disabilities, and because or some struggle, right? And everyone has them, but, like, people that have had maybe struggled more or other reasons or whatever that looks like, because yeah, I when you have gone through things and you've felt these different things, at least for me, I never want someone else to feel that way. When people
Yeah,
have asked me, "Why are you doing what you're doing? Why are you building this business? Why are you going on speaking on stages, blah, 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 blah." My answer is because I don't want any child to feel like I did when I was 10 and under. I don't want any kid to feel dumb, stupid, or alone. I want everyone to know that they can put their minds to anything that they wanna do with a lot of hard work, determination, never giving up, all of that stuff. It's just really important, and I think it goes back to learning about you, learning how to advocate for yourself will open up those more empathetic doors of yourself to
yeah,
understand others around you. Um, the more I've had a couple people way years ago on my podcast, and it was a really awesome guest. I know him personally. He's from lacrosse, and he used to be an ultra marathon runner, which means
hmm
you run for hundreds of freaking miles for hours and days and whatever. I don't understand it. If
right,
I'm running, a bear's chasing me. That's my thing.
yeah,
Um, but he now, he has lupus and he is in a wheelchair. And so he was talking to me about how La Crosse, Wisconsin, and this is not just La Crosse, like every
Yep.
community honestly is like this, is really not accessible. And
Yep.
how, and you would know this, I think we may have talked
Yeah.
about this a little bit, but
Yep.
how unaccessible the world is for someone that is in a wheelchair.
Yep.
And I will never look at a sidewalk the same again. I will never look, and I went to school for interior design. So like we have to think about these things every time we're designing something,
Right.
steps versus ramps versus let's make it accessible, ADA, all of the things. There's rules for a reason, but I
Yep.
want to do better than the rules.
Yep.
But I will never look at a sidewalk or um, a transition from the road to the sidewalk the same ever again when he shared some of his stories. And
Yeah.
so, again, whether you learn about yourself, but also learning about others is going to bring so much more empathy to you and the world.
Yeah. Absolutely. And the episode that just released, well, before this or this last week, was with Sarah St. Louis. So if you're listening, check out my episode with Sarah St. Louis. She is works with architecture. We talked a lot about accessibility and the ADA stuff, so similar things. But yeah, and my partner also said that to me before. She hasn't been around somebody with a wheelchair to the extent that she is now, with my daughter around. So yeah, just once you're kind of aware of all the things that are still inaccessible, way after ADA was passed, yeah, it's you see it all over the place.
Yeah, and I
It's kind
think
of
it's
it's
hard.
all over.
It's hard because like, and I don't ever want someone to feel bad of not knowing because you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah, yeah, for
And
sure.
so that's what I think is cool
Yep,
with your partner being like, "Wait, I didn't know all this stuff," and now
yep,
she gets to because it's
yep,
literally thrown into her life. But that's the beauty of being able to keep learning about people
yep,
and asking the questions and acknowledging people, like, just this it just seems so simple to me, and I know, unfortunately, it's not, but it's to me, it's like, just say hi. Like,
yeah,
just
for
simple
sure.
stuff like smile, wait. I am the weirdo, and I love this because I will be a weirdo all day long, and it shouldn't be weird, but I am the girl that will walk down the street and say hi to strangers as I'm walking by, and
Yeah,
I get double takes like, "What?" Most people, because 'cause we're in the Midwest, thank
yep,
goodness, are very nice about it, and
yep,
I honestly don't care if someone wasn't nice about it because if you're gonna be mad at me for saying hi to you, keep walking, So I just the simple little things, but just putting yourself out there and learning more about the world, uh, is not gonna do any harm for anyone, it's gonna only do
no,
good. So,
absolutely.
yeah.
This next question you kind of talked about it now, but can you give my listeners just like one tip about how they can make the world more inclusive today? Just something where you don't have to spend money or go to class, spend a lot of time, just something simple.
I think this just came to me, so thanks for asking that. I think I'm gonna piggyback off of what I just said. If you're out in public and you see anyone, I don't care who it is, but if it's someone, whether it is someone that has a physical disability or not, just say hi to them. Say,
Yeah,
"Hi, how's your day?" And that in itself, a smile and a hi, or opening the door for someone, and you see someone with their hands full, run up and open the door for them. "Have a great day." Those little things will make the world a better place and make people feel even just more included in the world, because you have no idea what someone is going through in their day, and whether you open the door and smile at them and say hi, that could be the best thing they ever saw that day, and it makes me emotional thinking about it because I really truly want everyone to have this beautiful, lovely life, and I know there's ups and downs,
yeah,
but just humanity and being a kind person, and it does not cost anything to say hi,
right.
to smile, or to open a door for someone that may need a little extra hand.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. Is there anything else that you want to talk about that we haven't discussed? Anything you want to share? I know you got your book is coming out sometime next year, so that's exciting.
Yes. Yeah, I'm real quick, I'm writing, thanks for asking. I'm writing a book, which has been an absolute crazy fest over here. It's been really hard, I'm not gonna lie. I'm dyslexic. I don't wanna write a book, but, like, I'm excited, I'm glad I'm doing it. It's a really good thing. All about advocacy, sharing my story more, bunch of awesome stuff. It'll be going hope The goal is to have it published and launched, early 2025. But I do have my podcast, which Aaron was on. So go listen to his episode at the very minimum because it was awesome. It's called the Different Ability Podcast. And you can just find me anywhere if you're ever interested in connecting or having any questions. Everywhere you can find me, just Katey Fortun. And so, yeah, and I have my website, kateyfortun.com. I'm just really grateful I got to be on, and I'm gonna have to have you come back on, the
Yeah, for
podcast
sure.
so you can share more about what you're doing here on this podcast because I want people to,
Yeah,
come listen
absolutely.
and congrats on everything you're doing.
You ready for the final question?
Yes.
Do you eat spam? Yes or no?
No.
No.
Aaron, we talked about this. We talked about this on the podcast. Maybe it wasn't on the podcast, but it was before, I
Maybe.
swear to you.
Probably.
Story time real quick. Imma make this the
Go
fastest
for it.
story I ever did. When I was a kid, our babysitter made us eat Spam. I hated it so much, all of us did. We put it under this is terrible, Joni, if you were listening, I am sorry we did this. She had a little, like, dachshund wiener dog, right? Tinker, and we would either feed it to Tinker or we'd put one of the girls I didn't do this because I was a good kid, but one of the girls would put the Spam under the tablecloth because we hated it so much, and poor little Tinker, by the time we were gone and in school, was the roundest little wiener dog I've ever seen in my life because he ate all the Spam. So, no, I'm sorry. I can't do it.
No,
I
that's fine.
can't. I'm actually not sorry. It's but hey, there are people out there that like it, and that is okay. It's just not for me. So
No, that's good. No, yeah,
love
I've been asking all my guests that as the final question. So I
it.
have a if you look at the show notes for the episodes, there's a running spam count of where we're at for the current guest,
Oh,
and
where are
then
we at? Like,
it's a great
is
question.
it more like than less? Because 'Cause I'm very interested. Actually, here's the real
It's
question.
actually pretty close. I mean, it's actually close to 50-50. I mean, I'm not sure, a little over, a little under, but it's pretty
So
close.
the question would be, do you like Spam?
I eat spam, yes. I had it with a couple or July we had a guy or somebody came into town and so we fried some up. I don't eat it very often, but I mean I eat it, yeah.
Well, I mean, you live in the Spam capital of the world, so I guess you have to like it a little bit,
Well,
right?
see, that's the interesting thing. I feel like people that I mean in the town, I don't know, it's kind of not that big of a deal, but I feel like it's more big of a deal to people that don't live here. I mean, people come
Sure.
in from like Hawaii to see the
That's
Spam
really
Museum and all that stuff. So I mean, people come in from all over the place to see the Spam Museum. So and I've been there 2 or 3 times. So I mean,
oh
I
my
feel
god.
like it's kind of a bigger thing for people out of town than in town, to be honest.
Sure. Yeah,
But
no, again, nothing against spam. You do you, man, but,
yeah, no,
it's
that's
just
funny.
not for your friend Katie over here, and maybe it's because it's the trauma of being a kid and having to eat Spam, and I didn't like it,
Probably.
um, but,
Maybe you should force yourself to try it now and see if you like it.
probably
Nah.
not.
Well,
Oh my
if you end up coming to Austin, go to the Spam Museum. They give out spamples. They call them. They have a person walking around with spam. You can eat them, like eat it. Yeah.
You know what? Spam should sponsor your podcast, quite honestly.
Yeah. I mean, I'm talking about it
You're
and
talking
stuff,
about it a
so maybe.
lot.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
I
Well,
love it.
thank you very much for being on the show today.
Yes, thank you.
To all of you listening, thank you for joining us on this episode of the Inclusive Dad Podcast. If you enjoyed today's conversation, please subscribe, rate, or review the show. Your feedback helps us connect with more champions of inclusion. Remember to share this podcast with friends and family who might benefit. If you want to support us in our mission, please click on the link in the show description. Together, we can make the world more inclusive. Until next time, stay empowered and be a champion for inclusion.